Hey everyone, welcome back to our reflection on FAB 2.0. So what we're going to focus on today is this paragraph right here. Legendary and fabled cold foils in uprising or future sets are around 3 times rarer than they have been historically, and this is being offset by the fact that rainbow foil versions are now more frequent, with the intention that this change would help better support card accessibility for fans who want to play the game. Right, as a whole, legendaries are meant to be more accessible. It's going to take less boxes to find rainbow foil variants, therefore decreasing their value while also trying to maintain the value of the cold foil variants. So altogether, on face value, this statement works beautifully, does it not? The issue is what we are seeing actually happen from this change is a overall decrease to incentive to open Flesh and Blood, which has then affected this whole mentality or this whole objective that this seeks to achieve, right? This exciting hunt for the moment of joy when you crack a pack and you find these high value cards is less achievable in this model than it has been previously. When it comes to Flesh and Blood prior to FAB 2.0, the mentality that was kept by anyone opening, by and large, was never open loose booster packs, right? There is abysmal value when it comes to loose packs. A box here and there is fine, but generally, what was accepted was you want to go for a case. A case was your best chance at achieving your expected values. The issue is this change has pushed that to a new degree, right? The mentality is no longer simply by a case, because if you're just going for the value of rainbow foils, you're not going to be able to achieve average expected values, right? You're not even going to get close. So in order to actually open Flesh and Blood effectively, to open it in terms of trying to recoup your value or achieve your value, or essentially outbeat the secondary market for just buying singles, you're now incentivized to open 2 to 3 cases to find your legendary and fabled cold foils. Now, I'm sure to most this statement isn't a big factor, right? The majority of any TCG community knows just buy singles, right? That is the whole mentality, is always just buy singles. You're trying to build a collection, buy the singles you want. You're trying to build a deck, buy the singles. Singles are always going to beat out opening the product. The issue is Flesh and Blood has continued to move away from even attempting to compete with the single market, right? The average person who buys 1 or 2 boxes is going to get absolutely wrecked with the average expected value. Simply put, opening a small scale amount of product is not going to net anywhere close to the EVs placed on boxes, placed on the sets. And without this incentive for people to open on a casual basis, what this has left is people opening on a mass scale, people who are selling singles. So what this has done is continue to skew the value of singles, right? The market is being heavily dictated by what is playable rather than what is collectible. The disparity between different cold foils when it comes to legendaries and even the fable cards themselves is greater in these new age sets than any of the sets prior. Finding a legendary cold foil, finding a Marvel card, isn't the big ticket item you'd hope it to be when you compare it on the spectrum of all the different legendaries, of all the different Marvels. It is skewed heavily towards what is playable. Take the 3 Marvels from outside. The Codex of Frailty is around $300, and then Inertia and Blood Rot are $150. Between those 3 cards, the value is tied up in one card, right? It's not 33%, 33%, 33%. It is 50, 25, 25, right? That is a massive skew when it comes to chasing cards, because it's no longer simply about opening any legendary cold foil or opening any Marvel. To try to find a expected value you'd want to achieve, to actually incentivize opening boxes, you need to hit the top end of every rarity. For instance, Watchtower Games has all the expected values of boxes. The expected value of an Outsiders box at the moment is $100, right? That is above what it actually costs at the moment to buy Outsiders. It's around $85. So again, on face value, opening Outsiders should be fine, right? You should be able to achieve a decent enough value that makes it worth opening it to jumpstart your collection, rather than simply buying singles. But the simple fact is, you're not realistically going to get anywhere close to $100. In Outsiders, you are meant to find 4 to 5 Majestics in a box, right? So 4 to 5 Majestics to achieve this $25 value, meaning that every Majestic has to be around the $5 mark. And that would be great, right? If every Majestic was around $5. give or take a little bit here or there along the spectrum of what is playable would be great. That's what you normally see in card games. The issue is that it is heavily skewed. Out of the 34 Majestics in Outsiders, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards around that value, right? We'll cut off at, say, 350. So 9 cards out of 34, and you need to pull 4 of these cards to achieve that expected value. Simply put, you're not going to be able to do that on average unless you're opening boxes in a mass scale. And this is a really important factor to consider, because if boxes are only being opened on a mass scale mentality, what this means is prices of cards are going to heavily reflect what is playable rather than what is collectible. We're going to see more and more skewing in the direction of what is playable. Having the Codex of Frailty at $40, while looking terrific, right? If you find this card in a box, you're going to be extremely happy because it's greater than the Majestic slot in itself according to the expected values. The issue is you have 33 other cards that if you find won't achieve that same, sorry, we'll go with 32 because premeditate is 24, right? So that's right on the expected value, okay? If you find any of these other cards, if you find any mix of these other cards, chances are you're not going to hit that expected value. And when you then combine that with legendaries, with fables, with marvels, when they all are subject to playability skewing, what happens is, by and large, the player base is not incentivized in the least to open Flesh and Blood. And the simple fact is, if no one is opening Flesh and Blood, if no one cares about the randomness of cards because the people who are opening en masse so that they find the cards that are deemed playable and are worth the money, then what is the point of it being a CCG, right? At that point, everyone is just buying from the singles market and finding the cards that they want. No one is essentially rolling the dice or enjoying the game for its collectible nature. Now, I'm sure there are lots of you out there. I myself, I open boxes. I plan to open a lot of Dusk Till Dawn, despite these expected values, despite the realistic truth that the median box price of any given set since FAB 2.0 is atrocious. You are not realistically going to see these values if you open a small amount of product. And while it's not necessarily a huge issue now, it is going to be an issue down the line. Another simple truth is opening legendaries is not the feeling it used to be. Flesh and Blood has continued to move away from this mentality that they were trying to capture, from every fan having this chance to have that moment of joy when they crack a cold foil legendary or fable. Because the simple truth is, finding these cards is not as great as it used to be. Finding a cold foil legendary simply isn't always going to be the big ticket item that Legend Story Studios hopes it to be, because of how much playability factors in to Flesh and Blood more than any other game. Again, the mentality I really want to get across is, if everyone is buying singles, if the only people opening boxes are doing it in mass, then the collectible value of cards just isn't there, right? They are opening boxes in mass and allowing the cards to be priced directly from what is playable in terms of a mass opening value, which then is continuing to fuel this disincentive to open Flesh and Blood and enjoy Flesh and Blood as a CCG rather than just buying singles. At the moment, Flesh and Blood just can't compete with its secondary market. And I personally don't think Marvels or the new CLSR cards are enough to regain the collectible nature that Flesh and Blood had in its original model. As weird as it sounds, what fuels the collectible nature of cards is the gambler mentality, and the odds for finding legendary and fabled cards in their best variant is now more skewed than it has ever been. That, again, people are de-incentivized to open Flesh and Blood. I'm sure the common advice given to new players, right, if they ask, what set should I buy, what box should I buy to kickstart my collection, more than any other game, I'm sure it rings true. We tell them, buy singles. You're not going to find the cards you want for the heroes you want to play. You need to just buy singles. You're not even going to find cards of a decent expected value on average. Again, on average. And if the majority are just buying singles, then what is the point of using the CCG model? There would be a far better delivery method for cards outside of the randomness that would still be able to hold the secondary value. Because what we're seeing in the secondary value is the simple fact that playability is the biggest factor over pull rates, over collectability. Because again, the method by which the majority of cards are hitting the market are through mass box openings that allow cards to be more and more skewed depending on their demand, and the demand right now is, again, playability. I don't think there is anyone scooping up large amounts of, say, Cold Foils or Marvel cards to hold on to sort of speculate on their value in the future. What we're seeing is cards be bought and sold based on what is playable. And again, that's great. It means FAB 2.0 has definitely done its job. It has achieved a more focused state on the playability of the game rather than collectability. But again, I do think it is overcorrecting, especially in the current pull rates, in the incentive to no longer simply buy a case, but to buy a few cases to actually achieve the average expected values you'd like to see to make it worthwhile to open Flesh and Blood in the long run.